Well, to quote someone very famous, it's deja vu all over again. So I know one of the defenses that's going to come up from the Knights of Aronis is, well, really, we're having it both ways, aren't we? You're complaining that Aaron doesn't do enough for the communitas and help us find the predatori, and yet here I'm going to criticize Aaron for going after the predatori, but it's a little complex. I'm gonna have to be very deliberately vague here because the Jane Doe wants to remain an anonymous Jane Doe. You can, if you want to, keep digging and digging. You're gonna piece together who the identity of the Jane Doe is. So, again, I'm trying to respect her wishes, so we're gonna have to keep it very vague. So, what is happening? Well, it's a little weird. Basically, the Jane Doe in one major Scientology case is also a Jane Doe in a Danny Masterson case, where Danny Masterson and David Miscavige and the church is being sued. And Aaron, being Aaron, decided to get involved along with Miriam Francis and Rabbit and other questionable parties and expose, and again, we don't know for sure if it's a criminal act, but basically Brian Kent, an attorney working on these cases, was acting unwisely. We're going to keep it discreet and PG rated. Any case, Brian was doing questionable things with the Jane Doe, and Aaron and Miriam and Rabbit decided to go public with some of these activities. Now, Aaron had framed this months ago like he was helping the Jane Doe, but apparently the Jane Doe did not want his help. And being very brutally simple, basically they wanted revenge on Mike Rinder. So the idea was that because Brian Kent was doing something wrong with these people, that Rinder would get the blame because Rinder had recommended Brian Kent as an attorney. But for the record, as far as I know, Rinder does have a lot of questionable associates, but Brian Kent is really not one of them. Basically, Brian is someone he knew from the Aftermath TV show. They met each other a few times. That's about it. But he did recommend Brian Kent as an attorney. So the idea was that because Brian Kent did something wrong, and Mike Rinder is around Brian Kent, ergo Mike Rinder did something wrong, and so on and so forth. Why does this matter? Because as Tony Ortega is reporting, and he's also being very, very vague, he cites certain online activists. He means Aaron, right? He's talking about Aaron. There's a whole big history with Aaron and Tony Ortega. I'm going to go through some of it, not here, but if you want to become a channel member, there's a lot of weird secrets between them. What exactly is the big beef? I'm not quite sure. I mean, Tony Ortega was never in Scientology. He's been, again, a controversial but very good journalist who's covered Scientology for, I'm not joking, over 30 years. He's been on the case for a very long time. But Aaron and him, for a while, have not gone along together. And Aaron, again, tries to frame it as a heroic. He's not going to be held back by Tony and his tabloid journalism, etc., etc. So Tony is reporting that basically by doing that and getting the Jane Doe mixed up, now Scientology can bring in Brian Kent and basically grill him. Now, maybe they would have tried this trick anyway, but basically now they have a lot of leeway to bring him in and try to get information from him. Now, the judge in that case is trying to be careful and saying, okay, fine, you can question him about a few things because they're trying to get Jane Doe's anonymity taken away and saying, well, really, it's not fair. Why should she be given anonymity? And the judge is like, no, she has to remain anonymous. I know what you're trying to do. Again, we don't know if Scientology would have tried to do this anyway, but basically Aaron, whether he did it wittingly or unwittingly, we don't know, but basically gave them kind of a free pass to intervene into this case. Is it going to ruin the case? We don't know, but now the chances that the case may be ruined has been increased. And Aaron, being Aaron, is actually saying that, guys, it's a very important case and I'm going to cover it. I'm sure he will be covering it for money and views. What he's not saying is that he may have tampered with that case in a very unethical way. And again, Aaron is aware of this accusation and saying, guys, the information was out there in our communities. I had to act. I had to protect the women's. I could not just stand by. The evil of Rinder had to be confronted. Me, Miriam, and Rabbit had to defend the women's. Now, you might be a little puzzled because in many other cases, Aaron doesn't seem to care about the women's. He doesn't seem to care that the predatori are around. Whether it's Tommy Scoville, Louis Repetto, he's now on the record saying, I don't care. My audience doesn't care about those people. Okay, so Louis, no. Tommy Scoville, no. But Brian Kent, yes. Seems like a double standard, but there you go. Now, is this the usual YouTube media nonsense where Nora and or Aaron are going back and forth? No, this is a real court case. This is the real deal. So, again, there are going to be many court cases against Scientology. So, even if this one fails, there will be other ones. But apparently, the Jane Doe, in reality, is very angry that she's being pulled into this controversy. And again, although Aaron is framing it as confronting the evil of Mike Rinder, that is also a lie. For about over 10 years, he didn't care about the evil of Mike Rinder. It's just that Mike Rinder pushed him out of the Aftermath Foundation, and Aaron got very angry and wants revenge. So you have very questionable people who don't really know the law and don't quite have a consistency in helping victims. I'm putting that very mildly, although Miriam has at least tried to let people know a little bit about Louis Repetto. She's not at all letting people know the full story with her and Louis Repetto. And Aaron, being the gentleman he usually is, kind of spilled the tea that people kind of knew behind the scenes that Louis Repetto was not a good person. But Miriam decided to do some podcast with him. But hey, magically, the podcast has been destroyed. So there you go. So it's just a lot of phoniness all around where Miriam and Aaron pose as these big heroes and champions of the victims. But when other victims try to get their help or attention, good luck. They're not going to help you. They don't care. So it's very sinister all around. Again, I'm not saying Tony or Mike Rinder are perfect either. There's a lot to criticize on their side as well. But here, basically, Aaron just made stuff up. Really, there's no thing here. Now, Brian Kent is a very questionable figure. That is definitely true. But there's no deep connection with these other people. There isn't. I mean, again, they do have questionable associates, but not Brian Kent. Brian Kent is someone new to the scene. And again, whether you like him or not, he actually was a good attorney on these cases. His success rate was very high. That's why they hired him. But to put it mildly, he has his own agenda, and they were not aware of that. But there you go. So two things can be true. Brian Kent is not a good person. Again, the charges are pretty strong and serious against him. However, he doesn't necessarily have this big friendship with Mike Rinder. Ironically, the person who does have a big friendship with Mike Rinder is, you guessed it, Aaron Smith-Levin. Well, there you go. So, as always, Aaron is kind of snitching on himself, saying, that Mike Rinder, he's so evil. He always hangs around some really evil men. Correct. So I guess, for the record, even though Aaron has had some troubles with the hurricane, I guess magically all his mirrors were taken away during the hurricane, and he never has to look at himself. Or so I would hypothesize in this case. But there we go. But hopefully the case hasn't been damaged too much, but it has been severely hurt for no reason because Aaron needs to get his revenge, as does Miriam and Rabbit, for the money and the clicks and the fame. And then when everything falls apart, they're going to blame someone else. I don't know. I guess they're going to blame me for this. I guess.